This has a little bit to do with our trip that we have just made. And before the trip started. And that was when we were down at Cobo Hall. And there was a prayer expo going on down there. And in this prayer expo, there were a number of people from around the world who came to be a part of it. They were from China, they were from Taiwan, they were from Germany, New Zealand, a lot of areas. Okay.
In Italy, there was.
Italy.
From Italy.
American. Okay, and there's some Americans. I did notice. Okay. It was an exciting time. Vern and I were given the privilege of being in charge of most of the prayer that went on, which we enjoyed and was a part of. However, there was one segment where an 88-year-old Taiwanese man preached. It was on a Saturday. This man was beautiful. You could see he was very old, but he had good control of his words, although they were not all in English. He spoke whatever language they speak, but he knew enough English to communicate fairly well if you listen carefully. And one point I want to share with you that meant a lot to me, but I didn't really know what it meant. And soon after I heard it, Ron and Becky were back there at our booth, and I went back and I told them, I think you weren't there, you were out visiting.
I was out visiting.
Working for the Lord.
Yeah.
I went back and I told them what this man had said. And he said to me, right in the middle of his sermon, he stopped and he pointed his finger, and in a strong voice he says, "You are qualified, you are qualified, you are qualified." Okay, I had no idea what that was saying, except I'm qualified. Whatever I'm doing, I'm qualified for everything or something. I didn't know for sure. But I've looked up the word qualify, and I want to share that with you in just a few minutes. Hi, good to see you. Come on in.
Good morning.
Hey, brother.
Good morning. How's everybody
Bless
today?
you. We are doing
Good
great.
morning.
There's coffee in there and some breakfast if you haven't
Good
had breakfast
morning.
yet.
Good morning.
You guys get
Good
some
morning.
coffee out of there if you want, or breakfast or cereal. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Todd didn't eat.
Are the kids with you?
No, we by ourselves today.
Oh, yeah, you deserve that too. You deserve it. All right, the next word I want to deal with is that at the end of about the middle of our stay in North Carolina, I told you already we went down to, what's the name of the city?
Oh, you mean Fort Mill?
Fort Mill, yeah, Fort Mill, South Carolina. I keep wanting to call it Rock Hill. Fort Mill,
Fort Mill,
South Carolina, and met with Bob Jones, the prophet. I don't know how many of you know who he is. It doesn't matter if you do or you don't, but he is one of the top prophets in the world. He's very old. He's a lot older than he looks. Wait a minute. No, he's not nearly as old as he looks. He's only 83. I say only. I mean, I'm approaching 77, so 83 is still kind of like a young buck. But he's very ill. He's very sick. Okay, we went in the room where he was. I'll make this brief because most of you heard a lot of this last week. We went in the room where he was sitting. His feet was all bound up and he couldn't walk anymore because of the diabetes. Had a blanket over him and he could not get up. His hand was kind of messed up. His hands were, his whole
all bruised.
body was not good. And he told us a quick story about he saw two winds blowing. And I'll tell you about those later if we need to. And then the next thing he did, now he did not know who we were. He did not know where we were from. His wife had not told him what little she knew. We had told him nothing. He knew nothing about us. Nothing. But he looks at me and he points again, just like the man did from Taiwan. He points at me, but this time he says, "You have authority, you have authority, you have authority."
The both of you.
Yeah, I was showing he was doing both.
I know, but he did the 3 and then he did that.
Yeah, okay. All right. Now, suddenly things are beginning to come together, but I didn't realize it. I didn't internalize it until Friday of this week. It began to dawn on me what had been said. The men from Taiwan and the men from South Carolina was teamed up by God to speak a message. And the message was, you are qualified with authority. You have qualified authority. And when it began to hit me on Friday, just this last 2 days ago,
Yeah.
I began to internalize this, that I am qualified for authority. And that one stunned me, because I want to tell you what these words mean. First of all, and the reason I want to tell you this is not because I'm excited about us, but I'm excited about what I can tell you for you and for those who are watching this video. The word qualify legally means to be entitled to a particular benefit by fulfilling a necessary condition. Qualification does not come because you're a good guy. Qualification comes because you have fulfilled a necessary requirement. It also means you become eligible for a competition or its final rounds by reaching a certain standard or defeating a competitor. Now, this is what qualify means. You do not have these things, certain things from God, because you're a believer. You have them because you qualify. And God has some pretty high standards. He says in the Word about not allowing a man who doesn't have his family to be in order, who is a young man. He's got to be mature, and on and on and on. The qualifications just to be an elder in a church, in a group like we have. Okay, when you go beyond that, the qualifications become very high. Now, I told God on Saturday morning, I guess yesterday morning, yeah, I got up early for prayer. I told him, I said, God, I do not feel qualified to have this kind of authority that you're giving me. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I said, if you feel I'm qualified, then I accept what you're doing and what you have said to me through these men who did not know each other from various parts of the world. And neither one of them knew me. I never even shook hands with the man from Taiwan. I had seen him at a distance. I have never shook hands with Bob Jones. He had never seen me. I saw him when he was on the platform once prophesying, but I was back in an audience. These men had never seen me. They knew nothing about us. They knew nothing about where we were from, what we're doing. One says, you qualify. He didn't say you're qualified. He says, you qualify. Period. There's a done deal. You qualify. The other one says, you have authority. Both of them pointing their finger, and it was quite amazing. All right, let me one more time go over this thing about qualifications. You become entitled to a particular benefit by fulfilling a necessary condition. This is when you are qualified. And you do not make the determination of your qualification. There'll be believers that will make it well into the glory land. And they will not have a cabin in the corner of glory. But they are not qualified for the reign of ruling, that one whom God designates. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I want you to look at me special? No. I'm telling you because I want you to look at yourself as being eligible for this kind of qualification. Okay. Now, the word authority comes from the Greek word exouresia. I don't know how to say it, and I'm not even going to try. You want to try it?
No.
Spell it one more time, please.
Exoresia. That is the Greek word for authority, and it means the power and the right to enforce something. The power and the right to enforce something, or the right to declare what is true and not true. That is the official title, a name for authority. It also means the power and the right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. The right to act in a specified way, delegated from one person or organization to another. Now, let me set something straight immediately. This kind of authority that God gives does not give any human being the right to rule over someone else. This does not mean, okay, I am certified, I am classified for this authority. This does not mean that I can say, you're going to move, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. If you don't obey me, you're out. No. My authority is in the spirit world, not over another human.
That's right.
You see, some people take authority to their head and they start to control or try to control people. Back about 30 years ago, 35 years ago, a movement started that was called the Shepherd Movement. And that Shepherd Movement sprang particularly out of the Catholic, Charismatic Catholic Church. And I was there. I didn't read this in a history book. It sprung out of the Catholic, Charismatic Catholic Church, and they became authoritatively with power, and they would tell somebody if they could buy a house, if they could buy a car, if they could get married, if they could do this. I mean, they became totally. Anybody remember that? You do, okay. It occurred just like that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that is not God's authority.
No.
When God gives you authority, it is to have the authority that Jesus had. Now, Bob Jones said to us, and I'm humble when I tell you this, but I want you to understand the kind of authority we're talking about. And those watching, I want you to understand what we're saying. Bob Jones said to us, when Jesus spoke, it was a done deal, no discussion. He says, you have the words of Jesus. And when you speak, it is a done deal and there is no discussion. All right, what does that mean? That does not mean I am to say, you are to do this tomorrow and it is no discussion. I'm not to say that to you. I have no authority over you. You are a free moral agent. I speak that to the world of darkness.
Amen.
To the spirits that control people. To Beelzebub, to Baal, to Lucifer, the devil.